Hello everyone and welcome back to some more professional StarCraft 2. Now over the last couple of weeks, I feel like I've been casting a ton of games with absolutely crazy strategies and build orders that don't really make a lot of sense. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely love watching and casting those games, but I think today, I haven't seen these games yet of course, but I think today we should be in for something a little bit more standard. And the reason for that is because both of these players are ridiculously good, and at the tippity top of the skill level, you can't really pull off a lot of tricks. Just to give you a quick overview, I suppose, both of these players are coming up on like $1 million worth of StarCraft 2 earnings. And that is only prize money, not including team salary and all that. These guys they're at another level. So anyways, spotting here in the top right corner of 2000 at most, that's game number 1 in this Best-of-3 series. We have Serral and his opponent in the opposite corner with the blue Zerg drones. He goes by the name of Rogue. Now, one of the reasons why Rogue has been so successful over the course of his career, both players, by the way, going for a hatchery first, is because of his Zerg versus Zerg. So his ZVZ is very, very strong. It's always been very good. Historically, he's been winning against pretty much everyone else out there. On the flip side, I mean, I don't want to be a jerk about it, because Serral's Zerg versus Zerg is still legendary good, and he beats basically everyone except for like a few. I mean, even those he beats most of the time, it seems. But Zerg versus Zerg is definitely not Serral's strong suit. I mean, I'm pretty sure if Raynor didn't exist, and if Dark and like, for example, Rogue didn't exist either, his Zerg versus Zerg would also be at like 80+% win rate, because once again, he beats pretty much everyone else out there. But there's definitely no denying that he struggles a little bit more in Zerg versus Zerg. Maybe it's just because his ZVT and ZVP are ridiculous. Anyhow, I'm excited to find out exactly what ended up going down in this particular match. This is a series that was played during Aces ROG a couple of weeks ago. So it's it's a series with money on the line. Both of these players definitely want to win. And I mean, that's how they play StarCraft anyway. They don't really play strategies just for fun. They don't really go for a lot of cheap tricks. They'll basically always win just by out-macroing and out-controlling the opponent. Alrighty, so very deep OV scout over here. Serral's already sent his a little bit further back. You don't really want to take any risks here, but Rogue just scouting around, checking here the timing of the drones in the natural expo, making sure that the correct amount of drones is present as well, so the Zerg player in red isn't hiding any links. Serral already thinking about going for a third hatch, and the same is happening on the other side of the map as well. Honestly, most of the mirror matchups in the early game, especially at this level, I can just kind of cast them from the production tab. Whenever one player starts deviating, we know that something is off, but for the most part, these games will be near identical. Look at this. Even the queens are moving out at pretty much an identical pace. Alright, not too surprising. Maybe we can find some differences here in the Overlord positioning. Alright, and on the other side of the map, Rogue does have vision of the same area pretty much. I mean, there is a small difference here and there, but it's really critical that you scout those attack paths. One of the most common mistakes that I see from players on the ladder, below, I would say, probably even Master League, I see this all the time from people in Diamond, is not positioning the Overlords properly. So you really do want to make sure you spread the first couple of Overlords around the map. Early on, the only anti-air units are the Queens. In Zerg versus Protoss and in Zerg versus Terran, obviously, there's a lot more anti-air available. However, in this particular matchup, you really do want to see your opponents coming in, or like your opponent's Zerglings rather, for coming in, as early as possible. So having those OVs on the attack path, super critical. Serral gets a couple of Zerglings in. This is the hallmark move of the finisher. Pretty much always manages to pull that off. Going for a Carapace upgrade. Okay, so the Carapace upgrade pretty much always indicates some sort of all-in. So when you think about it, the +1 missile upgrade, which I wouldn't be surprised to see right here from Rogue, or +1 melee, those two upgrades only really benefit one school of units, right? So for example, melee would benefit Zerglings, and usually it means Mutaling Bane. With missile, obviously, that benefits Roaches, as well as Hydralisks and Lurkers and all that. Carapace, however, benefits everything. So most of the time, so there's the +1 missile from Rogue, most of the time if we see someone going for a +1 Carapace, it doesn't really help them out as much in the mid game, but it's gonna obviously benefit both Roaches, Zerglings, as well as Banelings earlier on into the match. So most of the time with a +1 Carapace like this, especially now with Serral saving up a couple of OVs here and already having a couple of Overlords available, he's hiding them inside of his main base. Doesn't want his opponent to spot like 4 of these Overlords just floating around. Yeah, he's definitely planning on getting very aggressive here. Now, this comes at the cost of a lack of tech. So Rogue at this point, already a little bit ahead right here in the workers. Already got a lair done as well. The lair done here is absolutely massive because, yes, Serral is going to be able to finish up his +1 missile, or sorry, his +1 carapace a little bit quicker. But as a follow-up, just like I would say a half minute or so after that, Rogue is going to finish up his +1 missile as well as his roach speed. So it's going to be extremely difficult for Serral to go on the retreat. So it's important that he moves out. He needs to go right about right now, actually. Yeah, he wants to save up, but I think he should go. He's scouting around right now. Okay. Serral actually makes the executive call right here to not commit to the cheese. Or it's not really so much cheese. I guess it's more of like dedicated pressure, right? It's a bit all-in-y. He's scouted right there with the Zerglings that his opponent has already made a lot of roaches. And rather than committing to the push, yeah, he's mostly just adding on drones again. This is creating some very weird dynamics, though, because Rogue has been scouting around. He's like, okay, you're going for an all-in. I've seen your +1 carapace done right now. I'm waiting until you attack. I've been making non-stop units here for a while. Now you're not attacking. Whereas Serral right now actually has taken the worker lead. The game of drones, of course, is very critical. Both players trying to play tricks on each other. Rogue right now actually with an Overseer scouted right there that the third base is essentially fully saturated. Lings in the main base, ready to protect against a potential Nidus worm, but that's not happening. Instead, Rogue is going to push right with roach speed as well as that +1 missile upgrade. Does Serral have enough to defend against this? I mean, currently the army supply count is pretty heavily in favor of Rogue. Couple of mind games here and there, but obviously Rogue did have those drones a little bit sooner, right? So it will allow him to get more stuff out. That being said, the defender's advantage is huge. Honestly, at this point, that might just be too much for the finish, or not for the finisher, for the South Korean Zerg here. Nice little bit of control right there for Serral. Obviously, defender's advantage is massive, so the units will spawn a little bit closer to battle. But honestly, I think that Rogue actually may have just accidentally won the game. Yeah, GG is called, and Serral's forced to tap out. Alrighty, so game number 2 is on a Lightshade. So Serral tried to trick his opponent by going for the +1 carapace upgrade, and then, yeah, he scouted that his opponent basically already had it countered, but in the meantime, Rogue had also built more workers. And obviously, the person that has more workers out for longer will gain more resources, and if you then spend those resources on units, your eventual army is going to be bigger. So Serral tried holding on there by over-droning for a little bit, hoping that the defender's advantage would kick in the sense that, like, his roaches would spawn closer to the battle than his opponent's, but it didn't happen, and Rogue had way too much stuff. Alright, so, game number 2 is on a Lightshade. We do have Rogue right here going for a 16 spawning pool. This is a hard counter to any sort of cheese, or as close to a hard counter as you can get in Zerg for the Zerg. Serral, though, not really known to go for any sort of cheese. Every once in a while, he likes to mix in a 12 pool, and this map is pretty good for it. Yeah, Serral's just going to go for the hatchery first, which is perfect for him. Rogue following this up as well with a 17 supply hatchery, so not really expecting any kind of crazy commitment here from him. He'll probably just make, I would say, like 4 to 6 or so links here in the earlier stage of the game and roam the map with those. Sometimes you can kind of throw your opponent off a little bit with those, but most of the time it's not really going to matter all too much. So, there we go. Queen, 2 sets of links. Hello? We have minerals. Why are we not spending that larva? I have no idea why we're not spending that larva. Oh, he wanted to make an Overlord really badly first. Okay, so he makes 19 Overlord? I feel like he had the minerals for that as well. Not 100% sure. Maybe Rogue was all tapped out for a second to, like, change his music or something along those lines. Yeah, I think this is just one of those builds where you don't want to die to cheese. Like, if at this point Serral would show up on the other side of the map with, like, you know, 12 drones and a couple of Zerglings or whatever, right? It's definitely not great. At that point, you feel a little bit silly because then Rogue obviously is going to be able to counter pretty easily. So I think these are actually just scouting Zerglings, yeah. Maybe here to delay his opponent's third base or something along those lines. Nothing all too crazy. Serral, in the meantime, going for the ever so slightly faster Zergling speed. As you can see right here, he's got 23 workers already, and that is that difference of going pool first versus hatch first. I'm not sure, man. Rogue really wanted to get something done with the Zerglings, but then he probably scouted what his opponent was doing and just decided better of it. To be fair, though, the early game is very dicey, right? It's super easy to accidentally make a mistake. Do we have anything interesting here inside of the main base? Well, Serral once again gets that Zergling in, because he always does. Make sure that he scouts everything inside of his opponent's main base. No hidden Evo chambers. He scouts the timing right there of this... Okay. Of the metabolic boost. Rogue started up Zergling speed and then cancels it and goes straight into a lair instead. Alright, so Rogue has some sort of trick up his sleeve, yeah. He's probably planning on playing at the very least something 2-base focused for now. In the meantime, though, on the other side of the map, Serral has gone. Is he once again gonna go Carapace? He's got 150... Okay, no, he's gonna go Missile instead. Okay. He did have 150 gas there and 150 minerals as well. It looked like it for a little bit. Anyways, he decides to put down his own Roach Warren here. Did he finish up his own Zergling speed? No, he also canceled that. So, both players are trying to play mind games on each other by trying to outsmart each other, but in the end, the differences are negligible and... Yeah, most of it is basically the same. It's like, haha! It's like the Spider-Man meme, you know, where they're both pointing at each other. It's basically what these guys are doing in Zerg vs. Zerg. It's like, haha, I've tricked you, tricking me. But anyway, if you're watching this and you're a ladder hero, you like to play Zerg on the ladder, I highly recommend you do not skip Zergling speed. Just, you know, a little tip from Lowko. There you go. Skipping Zergling speed is a great idea if you know what you're doing. But honestly, I personally don't like skipping Zergling speed at all. It's bitten me in the butt many times before. I mean, you can definitely cut a corner if you want to, but more often than not, it's not a great idea. Anyway, so once again, by the way, no quick spires or anything along those lines. It's just going to be, yeah, roaches here from both players. A lot of the Koreans are very fond of playing Mutas. Zerg vs. Zerg really has gotten to a point, though, where you can basically add on Mutas at any point. So you can kind of just add on a Spire whenever you feel like it. You can rush one out, you can get one in the mid-game at a random point, you can build one when you're maxed out. It doesn't really matter. At this point, when you can just whip out a couple Mutas, it's very, very annoying. Mostly because the Hydra transition is pretty tricky to pull off. Rogue gonna go for the second Evolution Chamber here. Serral scouting around inside of the main base, checking for a Spire. But mostly just making a lot of units of his own. Second Evo right there as well for Serral. So Serral is a little bit behind, though, as far as like the upgrades go here and the timing on the third. I mean, he starts up his +2 missile a little bit sooner, I suppose, but... I like the timing right there of the second Evo a little bit better from Rogue. Rogue, though, this time around, the first person to get aggressive. Couple of roaches going around, trying to snipe any drones probably in that mineral line, but joke's on him. Serral's already spotted it, and there's no drones in the mineral line in the first place. Alright. The ultimate unit composition for Zerg vs. Zerg is Hydra, Lurker, Viper. So Hydra, Lurker, Viper basically beats everything. From Mutas to Brute Lords to Ultras to all of that, right? The problem is that Hydra, Lurker, Viper is also pretty expensive, so you kind of need to have 8 gases or so before you can start thinking about that sort of transition. So early on, we see Lings and Banes and Roaches and Ravagers and all those sorts of units. And obviously, if you're the one heavily trying to transition into towards, for example, Lurkers and Hive, and you're making the Hydra den and all that, you'll end up with like 10 or less Roaches than your opponent, and that can make all the difference. So deciding when to do that call and when to transition towards higher tech from the Roach Ravager phase is very, very tricky. Wouldn't be surprised if we see both players maxing out first before we see the first transitional structure coming up. Serral constantly scouting around, making sure he knows exactly what his opponent is up to. See the same thing happening here as well from Rogue to a similar extent. Also has got 2 Overseers here. Alright. So both players probably going to go for a 4th base pretty soon. We don't really have that much eco, though. So both players are trying to, like, play Roach Chicken with each other. They've only really got 52 workers here of your Rogue and 57 for Serral. That's not that much. Normally at this stage in the game, we see 65, 66 or so. Sometimes up to 70 with a 4th hatchery coming up. Both players are trying to, like, keep each other in check. Rogue once again going for a move out, but look at that supply count. Both players supply blocked. Both players try to get the majority of their stuff out on the screen, but you can see that they're still practically dead even. +1 Carapace is finishing up right here as well for Serral, so he's going to be able to even up those upgrades here. Rogue probably clicked one of his opponent's units here before the fight began. Queen's obviously also used here. That spine crawler also poking and prodding. Super, super helpful. These fights will go in favor of Serral if it continues. I think Rogue is overextending here. You really don't want to be in this spot. Alright. Yeah, so the only downside when the upgrades are a little bit late here, or I guess on the plus side here for Serral, is that Rogue probably clicked on one of his opponent's units before that fight began, and he's like, okay, I've got an upgrade lead, let's fight. And then literally like 2 seconds after the battle began, Serral finished up his own +1 carapace too, and the upgrades were even. Usually, like, those upgrades are so massive, you kind of can push for the victory there, but those queens and that upgrade finishing and then the spine crawler, very, very helpful. Alright, so both players brave enough once again to sneak out a couple of drones. Rogue, by the way, even, like, tricking his opponent here by moving drones from the natural towards the third base, I'm pretty sure. Just to, like, have his opponent scout the worker count at the third base and then actually have far less, but Serral obviously has had overseers flying around as well, just to make sure that everything is normal. Players playing poker with each other here. Alright, so Serral's gonna go for the burrow upgrade together with tunneling claws. Very interesting. Tunneling claws, of course, allows the roaches to tunnel underground. Not the ravagers, only the roaches. They also heal very quickly underground, but that's honestly secondary. The fact that they can get into the opponent's mineral line unscouted can be extremely helpful. +2 carapace starts up as well. This is one of those awkward games, man. I personally, whenever I play a game like this, it's very annoying because you don't really know when you can add on workers. So both players are trying to, like, be on their tippy toes the entire time and be very clever with their decision making. Serral just going around the map right now, trying to bile down some of his opponent's overlords. It takes 4 of those corrosive biles from the ravagers to kill the overlords. And so far, Serral's not really getting much done. Nicely done right there by Rogue. Every once in a while, I glance down at the bottom of the screen and I see, like, I see DP Gruge. Grogue. I can't be the only one, right? Alright. Now, the skin on these roaches also changes to one that has spikes on it, which is a big indication there, and also the reason why we see Rogue immediately morphing in a couple additional overseers. He's already got overlord speed and overseer speed coming up. Serral already finished his. Scouting around once again, keeping his opponent honest. A couple of roaches over there on the right side of the screen do get scouted. Serral splits up a couple of units and decides to engage this main blue army. Okay, nice move right there by Rogue. Pretty sure he's got the superior numbers. That army over there still being chased. Both players trying to remax here. As you can see, Serral does have 9 more workers, and it does result in a much bigger bank. Gruge over here, pretty much broke. But he does have a lot of units popping there closer to the battle. Serral thinking about running all the way back home. Couple of roaches did split off from the rest of the pack. There is an overseer available, but not over at the third base. Or at the very least, it's currently moving away. That being said, there is already a spine crawler in position too. Rogue decides to continue pushing here, and honestly, this blue army is looking absolutely massive. Great decision making right here by the South Korean Zerg. A couple of roaches of Serral have made their way down towards the 6 o'clock position, but honestly, I think this is the main problem for him to clean up. Got a lot more roaches just about to spawn. Rogue already has that +2 carapace done as well. Serral does still have a massive bank, but he needs to spend his larva to actually get that money down. Okay, reinforcing roaches are getting rid of most of the units here as well from the player in red. A couple of drones now pulled away too. It's kind of difficult for them to actually kill any of those roaches with +2/+2. They don't really get a whole lot of damage done at all in the first place, obviously, but especially against upgraded roaches. 9 drones go down, and guess what? That makes the worker count pretty much dead even. Serral manages to push back his opponent. And we're 12 minutes into this, and no one's really winning. Yeah, this is one of the reasons why... You can imagine, right? Like, this is a game where both players played a relatively normal and like, common early game. But you can imagine if you decide to play something far more aggressively, they will definitely scout out exactly what you're doing and then respond to it. And then these kind of moments is where they gain their main advantage. Still a nice situation, though, for Serral for sure. But now he's falling a little behind right here in the work account. Shall we actually switch to their view for a little bit? This is Serral's first-person view. I don't really cast a lot of games from first-person perspective, but I always kind of like it. Actions per minute currently at about 600. Is anyone getting nauseous yet? I play a lot of StarCraft, so it's not like... You know, it doesn't bother me as much. But I remember when I first started watching Twitch streams of my own, he's basically spending the entire time looking at overseers. Okay, let's go to the Rogue. I remember when I was first watching StarCraft myself, it was mind-boggling how fast people could play on Twitch. And I would watch that and I would sit there and just be in awe the entire time. Rogue noticeably slower though, right? When it comes to spamming the buttons. And don't get me wrong, a lot of it is spam, so it doesn't really like... You know, effective actions per minute might be a better measure. There's a lot of repeating and a lot of, like, clicking and stuff. Alright, I'll take control of the map again, or of the camera. Don't want to, like, upset anyone. Hey, look! That's what I was talking about. It is the random mid-game Spire. So when you're maxed out, you can kind of just add on a Spire at any point. And then once you... Well, it's gonna be scouted pretty easily. Once you lose a bunch of your units, if you can remax with like 15 mutas... I mean, 5 mutas aren't gonna do anything against roaches. 15 are also not gonna be that good, to be honest. But if you can like make a big clump of them and then all of a sudden you're like, you know, show them to your opponent and you can trick them, it can definitely deal some damage. In the meantime, though, on the other side of the map, we see Rogue going for the Hydra Den. And again, the reason why we don't see the Hydra Den usually as quickly anymore is because of the fact that, like, Hydras really need both of their upgrades before they're useful. So they have, like, a ranged upgrade and a movement speed upgrade. And you kind of need both for them to be effective. So it's just tricky. With Mutas, like, you kind of just make the Spire, which takes a long time to produce. But when it's done, right? Like, you can obviously upgrade them with, like, +1 flyer upgrades and all that, but it's not really as painful as the Hydras. Another most common mistake I see all the time for people all the way up to, like, Masters is going for the Hydras too quickly. Like, transitioning towards Hydras too early is very, very rough. Okay, so. A couple of roaches have popped out of the ground. Nice hit right there by Serral. No cancel. This will be defended over here, too. Looks like Serral is fighting this army well as well. Lurker Den is a follow-up, by the way, from Rogue. Would love to see a Hive coming up. Speaking of Hive, we already see one for Serral. Infestation Pit right now coming up for Rogue. So he's planning on going for a Hive pretty soon. Okay, we've got ourselves a nice little macro game. It's getting very tense, though, because one mistake, one little slip-up, and this game is over. Lurkers obviously can shoot spines underground, and they especially deal a ton of damage to roaches. They deal a lot of damage to every ground unit, I suppose, but Serral seems to already have a solution for that. Changelings moving around the map everywhere. Overlords flying around in every direction. It's insane how well matched these two are, though, right? Like... It is pretty wild. And this is probably the cheesiest matchup in all of StarCraft. Okay, so Overseers have been brought to the party here as well to try and push back some of that creep. Wouldn't be surprised at all if we're going to see the same thing right here. Yep. Serral trying to do a little bit of spring cleaning. Serral, for some reason, always looks a little bit more impressive to me in these macro games. I don't know, it seems like he's always just more comfortable. So he actually managed to snipe the hatch at the 6 o'clock. Hello. Okay, that hatchery for some reason. Left to live. Serral decides to make an Evo chamber block, but maybe he shouldn't have done that because, yeah, he loses the +1 or the +3 upgrade. Okay, he found out as well that the hatch didn't finish. Honestly, losing both of those upgrades, getting them both denied, is very painful. Serral already has his own lair, or sorry, his own hive obviously done. He's gone for the lurker upgrades right now too. Hive being targeted right here by Rogue, but does Rogue have enough damage to push this back? He also ended up killing one of his opponent hatches, the 9 o'clock position. Roaches in the main base are gonna be killed, it seems. That's a very big hit. Ooh, Rogue was thinking about going up there. I feel like he could have, honestly. I feel like he could have pushed through, but he didn't really want to, like, commit to it. Yep, so the Overseers are going around the main base right now. There's the Lurkers coming up. In order to see the Lurkers, obviously, you also need detection. A couple of roaches over here also get caught. Honestly, we've seen a lot of roaches going down right now. I mean, it's actually even. What? How? Ridiculous. Okay, so both players have actually lost a near identical amount of roaches. Can't believe we're 18 minutes into this and there's no, like, clear advantage. Serral has started up 3-3 again for the second time. Rogue has decided to forgo his, but he does have that faster hive, so at the very least he's going to be able to get his lurkers in a better position. Okay, there's a couple of lurkers available right here for the South Korean player. Serral, though, positioning his own lurkers on the high ground. Ooh, okay. Dodges at least some of those corrosive balls. Nicely done right there. Once again by Rogue. Couple of lurkers coming in from the north as well. Is there enough, though? Serral actually taking some very big balls to the face. Is there enough for Rogue to push through this? Okay. Rogue trying to cut his opponent off. Trying to see if he can potentially go after that hatchery at the 12 o'clock position. A couple of roaches have been tunneled towards the other side of the map, but a defensive lurker over there as well as a spine and a couple hydras. They're getting rid of that unit. Or that group of units. Serral decides to commit fighting this, but my god, that is a lot of dead Zerg units. Is there enough right here for Rogue to push through? Well, at this point, we see more and more hydras joining the fray as well. The final lurker in this position gets killed, and it looks like Serral manages to defend a very dire scenario, and he didn't even really lose that much. I mean, he's lost, yeah, quite a few workers throughout this game. But overall, I don't think that's really the end of the world. 37 drones only. This has been a crazy low eco game, by the way. Like, it is not uncommon to go all the way up to 70 workers. As a matter of fact, that's what we normally see. I don't think either player has really been at like 60 this entire game. So, normally at this stage, we have big banks for both players, but neither of them really has a lot of stuff. That does obviously mean that the upgrades are significant. A couple of roaches once again have tunneled across to the 9 o'clock, or the 3 o'clock position rather. Drones are being killed here as well. One lurker having an absolute field day, already killing 8. Reinforcing roaches for Serral over on the left side of the map. And honestly, if you look at the supply count right now, yeah, you blink once, 33 drones end up going down. There's not much of a bank available for Rogue either. Rogue is kind of broke. Is this like elementary school? I feel like that's an elementary school, you know, tease that people would do. Haha, Rogue is broke. Haha. Anyways. Hydras are cleaning this up. But all of a sudden, Serral just managed to kill 30 plus workers of his opponent. He killed the base over here, destroyed most of the drones over there. This expansion over at the third base is also really not doing so well anymore. Serral's adding on Vipers here, which is the last unit he really needs to add to this mix. Vipers here, obviously, with both abductions as well as blinding clouds. Absolutely phenomenal. Parasitic Bomb pretty good as well against flying units. We had that Spire mate, but never really a whole lot of Spire units. Plus, Serral just finished 3-3 again. Even though the upgrades got denied once, Rogue has decided to not go for those. Okay. Vipers are out. They do have some decent amounts of energy as well. What's Serral gonna do? Well, I mean, he kind of has free to... Yeah, he kind of has free reign. Can he go for a Blinding Cloud? He will. He's gonna try and Blinding Cloud on top of a bunch of his opponent's lurkers. Not necessarily the best move. Lurker over here has also got 7 kills now. The insane multitasking required, though, to, like, win these games is kind of ridiculous. Okay, Rogue setting up a big concave here. That being said, I mean, it's still on the home base right here of the finisher. And eventually, it is Serral who wins game number 2. Yeah, Zerg versus Zerg is just a bunch of glass cannons fighting each other. It's tricky. It's very tricky. Anyways, that brings us to the final map in this best-of-3 series, and it will be Jagannatha. So far, Serral seems to be ever so slightly stronger. But obviously, we're always on a razor's edge, right? We're like a bunch of core dancers. It kind of just depends, you know, on the way that the wind blows. I don't know anything about core dancing and how that even works, but at the very least, it's very easy to stumble and fall. Both players apparently still brave enough to go for that hatchery first. Can't blame them. This is a map, once again, where the 12 pool with the drone pool is pretty good. One of the ways that they're trying to counter that is by placing the spawning pools in the location where the spine crawlers would normally go. It feels very risky to me, and I'm not really a huge fan of it, but it does make sense. So usually say it's a 12 pool, and then your opponent decides to, like, pull the workers, right? Okay, so Serral's not doing it this time around. Rogue is doing it. He did it in the other maps, I don't know why. Anyways, maybe it was a bit late on the drone pool or something. Say, for example, it's a 12 pool right now from Serral, and Serral wanted to build spines. I mean, there's still some decent areas over here, but one thing that Zerg players that do that try to do is remove as much of the surface area as possible, and Rogue can kind of prevent that from happening. Normally, it's built a little bit closer over here. It doesn't really make much of a difference, though, but... yeah, the problem is on the flip side, right? Say you get 12 pooled, and then you've built your your spawning pool over here. I'd say, like, it goes on for longer than, like, 10 seconds. The spine crawler's finish, and then you lose the spawning pool, which is also a disaster. This, on the other hand, this positioning right here on the spawning pool helps out against, say, for example, like, a 13-12 with banelings and Zergling speed. So Serral could, like, plant the queen over here and create, like, a wall off, making it hard for banelings to get into the mineral line, because they'd have to go all the way around. The details in the mirror matchups are, yeah, pretty much everything. Link speed, though, on both sides of the map once again. Couple of links available. Couple of links available. They're gonna high five in the middle of the map. Do you think it's gonna be a high five? No, I think they're gonna actually go... oh, man. I thought they would meet in the middle, but there's no middle on Jagannatha, huh? A little sad. No high fives this time. Anyways, third hatchery coming up on both sides of the map. It's hilarious to me how even a lot of these games are, though. I can't believe in that previous one we were like 18 minutes in, and the game was still pretty much identical, with a couple of stylistic choices. Look at the production tab, look at that. One drone more for Serral somehow. He's also going for a second Ovi. But other than that, pretty much the same. Anyway, so Ling Bane for the Zerg players. Are we going to see a big influx of Lings and Banes? Normally, this is a moment in the game where you can add on a round of Lings. So both players making a defensive round of Lings instead. So if you're scared of your opponent making like 20 or so Zerglings, like this is the most common moment where people will go for a round of Zerglings. If you're scared of your opponent making like 20 to 30 of them, if you make like 10 of your own and you can morph in a bunch of Banelings, you'll be fine. So both players have made like a safety amount of Lings. Serral gonna scout around. Rogue gonna scout around. Making sure that they know what they're doing and what they're going up against. +1 carapace from the both of them as well, so they're once again trying to go for some aggression. I mean, once again, in the sense that Serral did this in game number 1. This creates some very awkward scenarios, though, where you're both wanting to, like, you know, trick the opponent. So I don't expect any lairs. I just expect, yeah, additional gases. How many workers are we gonna make? Honestly, if you're both doing the exact same build and one player has like 5 more drones, that's probably going to be the player who wins. So far, it's pretty much the same. Rogue starts up a couple additional Ovis. Serral starts up his first roaches. So 46 versus 45 drones. Overlord's right here for Serral, scouting out every single one of the attack paths, making sure that he sees everything that his opponent might be throwing to him, or throwing at him. Same for Rogue, by the way. So he's got an OV on every single one of these locations too, so he sees exactly what his opponent is up to. And now we're once again entering the age of the Roach. The age of the Zergling and the Baneling is done. Rogue going for a move out right now, right as Serral is about to go for a move out. This is about to get really awkward. I think all comes down to the engagement. Okay, a couple of free Zerglings there. Definitely does make a difference. I'm not going to be able to kill much. A couple of Banelings here for Rogue as well. Maybe he's thinking about going for like a bit of a run by or Trying to walk into his opponent's third base or something along those lines. That would be something. Okay. Both players picking off whatever they can. Okay. Serral decides to start up a lair and go for a couple of drones. Very risky, though, because Rogue is still making... He's still making units. I don't know if they're defensive or if he wants to, like, use them offensively. Well, at this point, he's once again gonna march across the map, it looks like. Serral sees the units coming across. 30 additional Zerglings. This is actually a disaster right now for Serral. I think he needs more than one spine. Okay, he goes for a second spine over here, too. Makes a couple of Banelings. Fair enough. A couple of Ravagers might not be a terrible idea. I mean, he did manage to kill a bunch of his opponents... roaches, I guess, earlier, so that's something, but... How's this gonna go? Dead even supply right now. Queens obviously also used defensively. Okay, those Banelings, very nicely dodged so far here by Rogue, who's shoving forward here. He's got a ton of additional Zerglings on the back of this as well. Serral forced to defend this. There come the Banelings, though, for Rogue that just finished morphing in, and honestly, it looks like the blue player just has way more stuff. Spinecrawler right now joining the fray. Queens are already picked off, it seems, or at the very least one of them. Second one gonna go down very soon, it seems, and the third one also gets picked off. The drones at this point running away for their lives. Yeah, there may be more drones available right here for the finisher, but if he loses all of them to this push, that's obviously not ideal. Rogue, though, still with the supply lead. He's got a lot of additional Zerglings on the back of this. 28 more coming up. Morphing in the weakened Roaches into Ravagers as well. And yes, those units will pop out of a cocoon with full health. Spinecrawler from the natural expansion has finished up. Serral's going to try and see if he can still somehow, some way defend. Losing 10 drones is acceptable, but at this point, his third base is in a lot of trouble too. Well, I think that Rogue actually is just smelling blood in the water right now. He gets some good corrosive biles there. Seems like he's going to be able to pick off his opponent's second Spinecrawler too. Serral hits GG. And with that, it's Rogue who obtains the victory.